Hi, Win. Just wanted to tell you that I made that fingernail cake that I asked you to bring, and it's true, it is better a day or two after.
I was born in Winnipeg, Manitoba, 1934. I lived at 494 and a half Main Street in an apartment building upstairs over a movie theater. We went at least once a week because it was right downstairs.
And what did your mom do for a living?
She was a domestic. She worked as a waitress, and then when we moved to Kirkland Lake, she ran a boarding house, and we had about 20 men staying there. There were apartment or units upstairs where they slept, and she cooked all the meals, breakfast, lunch, supper, and made the lunch pails, because some of them worked out at a lumber camp and some of them were working underground in a mine. She was born in Portage la Prairie, yes, in 1910. I'm not sure she was married, but she was with someone, and I had a half-sister. Her name was Cecilia, and they both died of some illness back then when they didn't have antibiotics. They had arranged marriages, and at the age of 14, my grandmother, her mom, married her off to an older man. He was a well-to-do farmer, and she stayed with him for a while, but my mom was feisty, and she didn't stay there very long, so my grandmother took her place. Oh, he was fine with my grandmother, and sounds a little silly, but in those days that was the lifestyle. And my mom moved to Winnipeg, to the city, because they were living on a farm about 25 miles outside of Winnipeg. And she became a waitress, and there she attended a Christmas party where she met my father in 1934, you know. And so Mom, she married my dad, and he was the cab driver, and she still worked as a domestic, and we were there until 1941. And when they decided to well, they didn't decide to get a divorce. My mom decided to leave and go to Kirkland from Winnipeg, and so what she did was she sold all the furniture in the apartment, and we got on a train at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and we just stayed on the train and moved to Kirkland Lake. And she did that because she knew somebody that had moved to Kirkland that was running a boarding house, and she thought that she could do the same thing. Well, my dad was very handsome, very charismatic, and apparently had a girlfriend. And she couldn't take the threesome, so she decided to leave. Yeah. That was a big surprise. Everybody in the apartment building bought everything that we had except the bed, because we felt that he had a place to sleep. So, and I was very nervous. I was 5 or 6 years old, and I knew, you know, that he was going to come home for supper, and I wanted to get on that train. I remember being so thankful when the train started to move and we got out of there. But as soon as we got to Kirkland, she ran the boarding house. We had about 20 men staying there at the time, and she worked really hard. They called me Alice in Wonderland because my hair was right down to my Chiapetta. and she met one of them, fell in love, and got pregnant, and then she moved away to Toronto to work at Avro Aircraft at that time. And I went and stayed with the neighbor next door, who was a hairdresser. And so I got my hair done once a week, free. But they had a little girl that was 2 years younger than I was. And we became just like sisters. And I spent 2 years with them, actually, while Mom was away. And my brother Tom was born. Well, I got this taste of showbiz at our Kirkland Lake Youth Club. These people came from Los Angeles, and on the whole school, KLCBI, went over to the club, and these people picked out different students to do these skits. And there were 6 skits, and I was picked for 4 of them out of this whole group, and I loved it. We had, in one play I was a newspaper person, and another I was a groom, because I was quite tall, but I just had a ball. We had so much fun, and they had costumes for us and everything, you know, so I got the bug. But I didn't know how to go about doing anything like that. I also wanted to be a backup dancer. I love music. I took Ukrainian dancing from the age of 8 until 14. And we used to tour around the different small towns on a bus, and we were in full costume. I had a peasant blouse with all the embroidery on it, black velvet vest with silver bangles on it, and a big full skirt, and a big crinoline underneath. It was great. And we performed. We performed in Timmins at the McIntyre Arena when I was about 9.
Where was Pigtown?
Pigtown was on the suburbs of Kirkland Lake. It was right at the end of Queen Street. There was a little wooden sidewalk, I think it was about a 10-minute walk, and you went over a bridge over Murdoch Creek, up 3-4 steps, and there was the town. And I think there's only one street, that's all I ever saw. We were in a little stucco shack. There was a kitchen, 2 bedrooms, and a wood stove. And coming into the house was a coal bin, because the stove, we ran it on coal and wood, which we had to chop ourselves. We had a well right across the street, or the boardwalk from us, and an outdoor toilet, which we really appreciated in the wintertime. But it was a great place. We had a little garden in the summer, and it was mostly people from Europe, a lot of Ukrainian people, and on Saturday night they would all get together and during the summer and have a sing-along and a barbecue, and it was great fun. It was just like a little town.
Summertime, when the living is easy, fish are jumping way up in the sky. Your daddy's gone, and your mama's good looking. So hush, little baby, don't you cry.
Mom was a good singer, yes. She used to sing with her brothers at weddings, and my uncle played the violin, and my mom played the mandolin, and I don't know what other instrument was involved, but they had a little band going, yeah. It was a close little town that we had there, a very small town, but it was great. I was in Kirkland Lake until I was 24 years old. So when we moved there in 41, I would have been 5. And yes, I stayed there. I worked, grew up there, went to KLCVI, and then I got a job at Eaton's. And during school, high school, I used to go and work there part-time over Christmas holidays. And then I went full-time and I ran Eaton's Ladies Wear for 8 years. I was there, and that was the best job I ever had in my life. When I went up to the ladies wear department, they told me that 2 or 3 times a year I would have to take a buying trip to Toronto, and it would take 3 days. My spending money was $75 at that time. That was in the early 50s, probably 53, 54. And so they would give me my money, and I would board the train, and it would leave around 5 in the afternoon and would get in first thing in the morning. And so I loved it. I wasn't too nervous because I was too young. I was around 19. So I took the trip and got in there and met our buyers from Toronto, Miss Beamish and Miss Cookson. And so we would, I would meet them first thing in the morning, and then they would send me out to the buying houses. Now most of them were in Spadina, and most of them were run by little Jewish fellas, and they were so adorable and so giving. And so we would, I would sit there with a coffee, and this associate that I worked with, I said to her one time, I'm going to be nervous because I don't know what I'm going to say to them. I'm 19, what am I going to have in common with these older people? And she said, well, just smoke a cigarette, dear. And I said, but I don't smoke. And she said, well, just take a package with you in case you're nervous. So I said, okay, that's a good idea. So they propped me up on this chair, and I'm looking at these balls coming down on the ramp, and I'm feeling pretty important, and I had my coffee and my cigarette, and I took a couple of puffs, and I looked down, and at that time I had artificial nails, and I looked down and my nail was on fire. And I looked around, nobody had noticed, so I just dunked it in my coffee. And then I thought, I wonder what it's going to look like, and I pulled it out and it was all black. So then I had to try to cover up that one finger, and I couldn't point to anything, but I got away with this. Now, because our department was in the red for so long, I was under a lot of pressure to bring it out and make some profit. But this one time that I went, they had these reversible skirts, and I'm sure a lot of people purchased them. I know that I heard about them a lot afterwards, but they were a plaid, a gold plaid on one side, and maybe a black watch plaid on the other side. And they sold, we got them for $12.50. They sold for $25. And I thought, you know, that's going to go over big because any age group could wear that type of skirt. So I bought tons of them. And that first year we came out of the red, and I actually made $500 bonus. I got a 1% on whatever profit that we made, and I brought it out of the red, and it was quite a thing. They called me into the office. I thought I had done something wrong. They sat me down and they said, you've got a check because you've really brought the department out of the red. So I was only 19, so I thought that was quite an accomplishment, and I loved it. From there, at the age of 24, fell in love, got married a month before I turned 25. I was considered an old maid. They were quite concerned about me, but I loved the job that I had, and I wasn't in any hurry. But I met a fellow that was from Acton, Ontario, and I really liked him because he seemed so out of it, like he was naive, you know, not used to the boys that I knew from Kirkland. And I found out later that he was going through for a priest, and he'd been in the he was going through for a priesthood from the age of 12 to 18. So he didn't know who a movie star was. He had no idea. And I thought, this is a guy for me. I can train him myself. So we got married in 1958. And I didn't leave the store. He went back to Acton, and I stayed from August until October. Stayed working at the store, and then transferred over to Brampton. From Brampton, we went to Kingston, and that's where Sherry, my oldest, was born. And that was a town, a university town. So there was the university, the military, and the people that had lived there all their lives. So yes, we were there maybe 2 or 3 years, and then moved back to Timmins, Ontario. Yes, where my other 2 daughters were born. And that was, I loved it. I loved Timmins, back north. I guess I'm a northerner. I grew up in Kirkland. And so we lived in Timmins for 16 years. And it was fun. The street we were on, we knew everybody. I got playing cards every second Tuesday. And it was just something to look forward to. I joined jazz dancing and tap. I took tap when I was in my 40s. And my card party group would come as parents and watch us when we had a concert. And yes, so it was a great place to live. And I loved my job. I worked for Sears. That's when I started in '72, working for Sears in the catalog office, and then was transferred into credit. And a great group of girls. I loved them. They were afraid there was going to be a war back in the 60s. So my friend Jane, we decided to take a radio operator's course so that we could save everybody. I had 3 small children, and I felt this is what I needed to do. So it was a summer course. We worked in cars. She was in Mobile 1 and I was in Mobile 2. We had to learn their alphabet, and at the end of the summer we had to take an exam. And I got my radio operator's license. And I had put all the papers and my exam papers in my hope chest at that time. And my youngest daughter, I'm not sure how old she was, but she was snooping around in my hope chest, and she found the papers, and she went to her father and told him that I was a spy. My mom taught me how to read cards. She read teacups too, but I never got very good at that. But she taught me the symbols of all the cards, and I started just doing it in the neighborhood. And then one day a knock came to the door, and it was a woman from Cochrane. and she said, "I hear you're really good reading cards." And I said, "Yes, but I don't do it for a living." And so she said, "Well, I've come all this way." So I read her cards, but she tried to pay me, and I said, no, I don't want your money. But yes, and when we played cards every Tuesday night, every second Tuesday night, I read the cards of everybody that was there at the time. There was about 8 of us.
And do you still read cards now?
Once in a while. I don't really read them. I may cut 3 times and take a look at what's happening. I can tell right from just cutting the cards. If one of my daughters taking a plane trip, or there's something a little dangerous coming up, I normally cut the cards and they make a wish, and yeah, I do that. But Mom was really good at reading teacups. But she pulled a joke on me, because when I was a teenager in school, she would read my teacup and she'd say, "You're not studying hard enough." And I knew that she really didn't see that in the teacup. But yeah, she was very good at it.
And how did she learn to read cards?
I don't know. I think probably back home. maybe from my grandmother, because that was a big thing back in those days. There was a lot of card readers, yeah, and she picked it up. She was very good at it. From Timmins, we went out to Calgary, Alberta, and that was really tough for me because the credit office at Timmins was great. There was 6 of us at the credit office, and it was like family. Wednesday afternoon the store was closed, and we would bring our lunch and have kind of a buffet. And the store manager, who was off in the afternoon, would come in just to have lunch with us because he knew that it was going to be good. So we moved out to Calgary. I was there from 1981 until 87. Got a divorce and moved back to, first of all, I lived in the beaches in Toronto, and then moved out to Scarborough and worked in Pickering. In North Bay, I'm retired, and living in a cul-de-sac with lovely neighbors, but they're all much younger and working all during the day, so I'm sort of the security officer here. I'm the only one here during the daytime, and it's sometimes I find the days long, because when I lived in Timmins and other places, I got to, because my children were young, I got to know everybody. And then I was in the workforce and had a lot of friends. And here, because I was already retired, I'm not out and about, so I don't know that many people. But I like North Bay. Well, I love the North. And we're close to Ottawa and Toronto and those places, you know. The only thing is that I'm not close to my family. They're in Toronto and Waterloo, so that's not a good idea. But I think that I'll be moving within 2 or 3 years, closer to Toronto.
Hello, this is Bell Telephone Company, and we want to know if you've got your son. We're just making a courtesy call, and if you would let us know. I don't know your number, but if you have a son, you call me back. If not, we will order one for you. Thank you.
Okay, and what's your IQ? I know there's been an IQ test. Tell me what it is.
140 something.
Your IQ is 140 something.
Yes.
Confidentially, I like to walk with confidentially with a girl like you. Confidentially, I'll tell you this, I wouldn't if it wasn't so, but now I think you ought to know. But keep it dark, because you'll see it's so very confidentially. I really shouldn't tell you, but there's something in your smile that makes me want to linger when I should run a mile. So now I'm gonna tell you, if you'll listen just a while, confidentially, because it's true. Don't tell us so, I love you. Confidentially, between you and me, I love you. You know I do.
What time is the sun?
Look at that. Get a video, your daughter says. Picture's not good enough. I want a video. Hang on, don't pull her arm off.
You know,
She's gonna have a bad shoulder then too.
over there. He'll be incredible.
I got video.